What's up, Triathlon family? Listen, I am coming back to a topic that I have touched on several times over the past 2 years, the mental diet. But I'm going to come at it from an evolved way. And I think it's very much so time to do it because many of you, all of us really, are working to manifest our lives, get after our dreams, go after the goals, generate the financial freedom, start the business, do well in corporate, be good with our family. Like we're genuinely trying to design our lives. And there is something very subtle that people do not realize that I fell into a little bit backwards over the years, but I know the power of it, which is the mental diet. And I want to tell you where I'm coming from today because I'm going to tie the pieces together on a few things. But what's sparking this episode was there was some discourse we were having in the Triathlon global community about social media, traditional media, and all of the information that gets punted our way. And because people doom scroll or just leave the TV running in the background or whatever, and they're not curating the information, whatever information gets to us in a repeated fashion is going to absorb into our minds. And that absorption affects our emotions. Our emotions affects our actions. And repeated actions affect our reality. And people don't realize how much information that you are absorbing unconsciously or sometimes consciously. And not all social media is bad. Not all traditional media is bad. But there is a lot of information that is coming to us in a repetitive nature. Think about grade school or formal education, multiplication tables, and American history if you're from the United States, or whatever the topics were in formal education. Because we got it on repeat and it was force-fed to us, that influenced what we became as people and how we thought. So from a trying life on perspective, when I say lifestyle design, or when I say let's try life on, I mean it in a very specific way. Trying life on was never about real estate or travel or money or lifestyle design. No, those are outcomes. The deeper layer of trying life on is learning how to consciously participate in the shaping of your own mind instead of unconsciously allowing the world to shape it for you. And when you start understanding that, you start becoming far more intentional about what you consume, who you surround yourself with, what environments you stay in, and what thoughts you continue to rehearse internally. And that awareness is what changes an entire life trajectory. We were having this conversation in the Triathlon global WhatsApp community. Again, there's about 120 of us from 45 different countries. That's why I love that discourse, because we're getting feedback from each other around the world. And there was one particular comment by Christoph, who's in Germany. Hope you're listening, Christoph. But he said, listen, side note and an observation, interesting development. He said, I'm going to go back one. There was another person by the name of Nina who said, the social media diet is real. And once you walk away from it, I don't know if you've had this experience, but for me, I have seen things so much more clearly with less noise, more connection with discernment. And she was mentioning that LinkedIn is the only form of social media I have given any of my attention to, just because she's doing business there and things of that nature. And there was another member who had just joined the community introducing himself. And he expressed that he also went through a social media diet and influenced by the fact that I had talked about social media dieting for quite some time. And he just kind of delved into it. And now it's a steady part of his journey. So Christoph comes on a little bit later and mentions the following, which is what I thought was really compelling, which is what is truly motivating this episode. He said, that stuff is an interesting development because he says, think about it. Social media was sold to us back in the day to stay in touch with people and as the key to the future. And he goes on to mention, if you fast forward to today, it has kind of evolved into something entirely different and almost the opposite of what it was intended to be. It's AI content, it's jealousy, it's hate, and it's self-promotion. It just kind of seems to be the state of where all things are now. And one observes that environment and it seeps into you, and it becomes part of your experience and existence. And he mentions even the content on LinkedIn, for example, looks more and more like copy and paste, where it's the same semantics, same structure, but just different content from post to post, which is why I left essentially all social media over the past 4 or 5 years, although I do post my newsletters on LinkedIn, although I don't interact with them because I don't want to be on social media. So I thought that was very interesting. And my response to the group on the discourse was, I wanted folks to understand that a mental diet is more than just blocking out or filtering social media or traditional media or what have you. It has a lot to do with conscious creation and creating your reality. In podcast episode, so I'm going to go back 2 podcast episodes that I did in the past. Podcast episode 61. I think it's 61. Let me just pull it up right here. Yep, it's podcast episode 61. In that podcast episode, which I released in June of 2024, so it's almost 2 years now. And that was when I articulated to the community and to you guys that I kind of fell into, and I gave the title of the episode, Mastering Your Mental Diet, Controlling Your Environment and Mindset. And so this is June of 2024. And what I explained in that episode was allowing your mind to focus on what truly interests you rather than consuming everything around you. And I said that we're constantly consuming negative information, having no bearing on what we actually care for in life. In actuality, our external world is a reflection of our internal thoughts. And if we let information in that we don't want, our world is going to reflect that. So your goal is to restrict non-impactful information you receive in order to try life on more. Now, here's the example that I expressed, and I think this will resonate with you, hopefully. On my core journey, so I talk a lot about the 5 freedoms. It's in the intro of the podcast. It's in the outro of the podcast. Time freedom, financial freedom, geographic or location freedom, freedom to execute your purpose, and freedom to build meaningful relationships with wonderful people close by or around the world. Those were my goals, stated goals. And over my core 17 to 20 year journey, there were 5 books that I read constantly. I wrote about them in newsletter 28, The Power of the Mental Diet, but the 5 books were related to lifestyle design, purpose, real estate investing, and investing in general. And here were those 5 books: The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, The Millionaire Real Estate Investor by Gary Keller, Multifamily Millions by David Lindahl, and Money Master the Game by Tony Robbins. And I found them at varying points of my journey. But the key is, when I did find them, I kept rereading them over and over and over and over again. Now, I credit those 5 books with helping me achieve my 5 freedoms, with helping me become a real estate investor, with helping me understand my purpose in life after I came back from my second or third deployment in 2016 as part of the U.S. military. And I was a little bit lost when I came back, because then I was re-entering a corporate office when I was actually out in the world as a federal agent doing all this amazing stuff around the world from a diplomatic perspective, military perspective, or just meeting people around the world in Turkey and Africa and the Middle East. And I was doing all this amazing stuff, and I came back and had to go back to corporate life. And I was like, why am I sitting behind a desk? I could not get a grip. But Man's Search for Meaning helped me figure that out. So those 5 books, what I expressed in the episode is those 5 books were not, it's not that those 5 books were the best books in the world, not at all. It's that because I kept rereading the same books over and over, I was the best at those books. So in effect, without realizing it, I gave myself my own first mental diet. Because when other books would come around, or when Bitcoin came and NFTs showed up, and gold and silver and platinum, and you should invest in this and do that. No, I just stuck with what those 5 books told me about investing or saving money for my paycheck, investing in real estate, investing in broad-based index funds, designing my life, and making sure I always had a why. And I just press repeat for decades. And it worked. And I have my 5 freedoms. So it was a form of the mental diet. The other thing I say in episode 61, when I was introducing the concept of the mental diet, was that I had just started living in Lebanon. And because I spent so much time there, there's no US news, or there is international news, of course, but things are not focused from a US perspective, or Democrat, Republican, or US socioeconomic issues. I was starting to realize that because I was in a different place, I wasn't hearing this. Actually, I wasn't hearing anything because there was somewhat of a language barrier, because I don't speak Arabic or Lebanese, although I do speak French. But most of my conversations with people had to do with just life in general. And I found myself happier because I wasn't subjected to typical US-based negative media or political conversations or other information not beneficial to my journey. You know, all by controlling my environment. And then I took that, when I would float back and forth between Lebanon and the US, I took that concept with me and I kept doing it. I just kind of stayed away from negative books, negative movies, negative media, negative people. I found myself in airports when I would hear people talking about nonsense, I would separate myself from it. So that was episode 61, Mastering Your Mental Diet. And I didn't realize I was on a mental diet with those 5 books over the last 20, 25 years until I started studying human performance and human divinity. And I was like, oh my gosh, I gave myself a default mental diet and I didn't realize it. The way I realized it is I study and read someone by the name of Emmett Fox. And in 1935, Emmett wrote The 7-Day Mental Diet. And I ran into his pamphlet and I read it. And I was like, my gosh, I didn't realize that I was giving myself a mental diet. So episode 61, if you go back to it, it was one of the core pieces, fundamental tools that I use to earn my own 5 freedoms, but also to vector how I was going to live my life going forward. Now, if you fast forward to episode 137, I think it's 137. Hold on one sec. It's episode 137, Protecting the Mind, a dialogue on mental dieting with my friend Earl Talbot. I was driving one day, and Earl, I had not seen Earl. Earl and I met over social media, but because I left LinkedIn, we hadn't spoken in some time. And he was just checking in with me. So that episode was November 21st, 2025. So it was about a year and a few months later. He was just sending me a message just to touch base. And we had this spontaneous voice note exchange that I edited into a podcast episode. But essentially, we talked about how most of your thoughts are not chosen by you, the subtle way that social media and mainstream narratives infiltrate your imagination because it's repetitive. Like you just start to see, and I've said in a lot of ways to people, there's great parts of social media too, so don't get me wrong. But I've said in a lot of ways to people, social media, especially Instagram and Facebook, many times is what you haven't done, where you haven't been, and who you or what you have not become. It's just a constant reminder of something that you want to be, right? In a subtle way, it just infiltrates your imagination and shows you that I didn't do well. We talked about mental dieting through the lens of Emmett Fox, who I just mentioned to you, but also other authors that I read, like Neville Goddard, Wallace Wattles, Dr. Joseph Murphy. I've mentioned those names before. And why waking up permanently removes you from status quo. When you start to realize that all that information that we're getting from the outside has no bearing on your dreams. In fact, most of it keeps you from your dreams, because it's always impressing on you and your subconscious mind everything you are not. It's very challenging. So check out episode 137, Protecting the Mind. I had evolved by that time, understanding much more of how our thoughts impact our reality and how I didn't want to allow random things into my mind. All right, so fast forward to the discourse that I was talking to you about from the WhatsApp community and why I want to bring the concept of the mental diet back forward again. Listen, yes, actions create our reality. They do. So when you are hustling and when you are, let me do this deal or talk to this person or go to this place, or yeah, of course it's going to create your reality. But actions are usually a downstream from thoughts, right? You act because you're thinking about something. So actions are usually a downstream from thoughts and beliefs and emotions and internal dialogue that you have with yourself. So if a person constantly feeds themselves fear and comparison, limitation, outrage, scarcity, all that unconscious nonsense that exists, social media, traditional media, your neighbors, your family, all the pessimistic people, all the things that are telling you you cannot, it absorbs into you, especially when you're allowing it to just constantly be in your feed all day long. It is just like people, as Christoph said in that message, social media and other things were intended to connect us, but actually what it's doing is just creating a vibration of separation and all the things that you cannot do by looking at all the things that other people are doing. Motivation is one thing, but comparison is a totally different thing. So what I suggest to people to think about is, okay, but those inputs eventually become thoughts, and thoughts become emotions, and emotions become actions, or at least influence actions. And here's the kicker. Repeated actions create our reality, the things that we do constantly. So if those actions that you are doing repeatedly are coming from emotions that are being influenced by thoughts that are not even yours, it's just you're doom scrolling social media, or you're talking to the same guy sitting at the bar who is pessimistic about life, you're not going to get anywhere. In fact, your whole trajectory is going to change. So that's the chain that I want folks to see, that thoughts become emotions, emotions influence actions, and repeated actions create reality. And that's why the mental diet is so important. That's why who you surround yourself with is so important. That's why the environment you are in is so important. One of the things that I used to say when I was in corporate, and I loved corporate, I've said it many times, I just leveraged 9 to 5 more than it leveraged me over the years, but while I was in corporate, I wanted to be a police officer, or I wanted to be a real estate investor. But had I only limited my mind to the information that was in those 4 walls, then I would have never gotten anywhere. I surrounded myself with real estate investors. I surrounded myself with police officers and federal agents. I didn't just surround myself with IT consulting professionals. I needed different information to get to where I wanted to be. You have to direct your thoughts. Want folks to see that chain. I am personally vicious about who and what I let into my mind nowadays. You can hear that evolvement if you go listen to episode 61 and episode 137, and also read newsletter 28 at the website, trylifeon.com. Not every thought deserves residency in your mind simply because it appears. And I really hope that sinks into you. Not every thought deserves residency in your mind simply because it appears or somebody says something to you. There's no way you can stop every non-wanted thing from being around you. It's impossible. But you can have awareness about what's getting to you and stress to yourself, yeah, that's not me, moving on. So a random headline, a fearful conversation, someone else's limitation. You shouldn't do that, Johnny. An old identity. I can't do this because I'm black. I can't do this because I'm white. I can't do this because I'm a woman. Men don't do this. What about inherited beliefs from families just because your background is Caribbean or Indian or Jewish or Muslim or Catholic or Christian? We all have inherited beliefs from our families, culture, school, media, history. Unchecked, all of that stuff becomes programming. It's all programming, and it's inconsistent with what I call the perfect day or the true dream that you have for your life, because you're allowing it. It's better to allow the information that will push you forward to that dream or to that perfect day. That is why the mental diet matters, and that's why I wanted to bring it up again. It's not just a social media issue, it's a how you think issue. Because thoughts, all that stuff we absorb becomes thoughts, and thoughts become emotions. Emotions influence actions, and repeated actions create our reality. It's how I became a police officer. I never stopped thinking about it. It's how I got my 5 freedoms. I never stopped thinking about it, and generally would only consume information that would move me forward to get it. I want to give you a real world example. There are several people that I've coached, let's say in the Try Life On community who, and again, Try Life On is not about real estate. I just tend to, because I know real estate, I can help people with it. And to earn financial freedom or to at least start generating passive income, a bunch of people wanted to do their first real estate deal. And I can think of 5 or 6 people off the top of my head in the last year that I've spent time with from a coaching or an advisory perspective, whose inner dialogue said, there's no way I can be a real estate investor or buy my own deal. In fact, a few of them were essentially self-sabotaging their deals. Like they would find something and find every reason why it wouldn't work. The inner dialogue folks were having was louder than the possibility itself. And that inner dialogue comes from family, comes from, I talk to my friend and my friend says this is impossible, or interest rates are too high, or whatever it is. People or family, peers, coworkers, neighbors have been killing people's dreams forever just by saying it's not possible. Folks rely on their history, or they have fear, or they have self-image issues or conditioning, which keeps reinforcing the old identity that things were not possible. But as a coach and as a friend, I'd been doing real estate for so long that my voice, in concert with people's own inner voice and growing faith about the whole thing, started to get really loud. And a lot of people also started noticing other people doing a real estate deal or starting a business or leaving corporate or going back to corporate or traveling to some country that they had never traveled to. And they just started modeling them. And do you know what happened? In the last 12 months, I think it's actually more like 7 or 8 months, 5 or 6 of the people that I was helping have done their first real estate deal. In their 20s, 30s, 40s, and one person who's 65 just did its first. Again, I'm just using real estate as an example. It could be anything. It could be starting over from a career perspective. It could be having kids later in life. It could be traveling for the first time. It could be designing life between 2 countries. It could be whatever you want it to be. But you have to put yourself in a situation where the information that you are absorbing is supporting that effort, rather than unconsciously absorbing all the nonsense that is sent our way. You can take in positive information and filter out the negative stuff. Because eventually, those new thought patterns, the beautiful ones, the supportive ones, the I can ones, those are the ones that become stronger than the old historical I can't. And once they become stronger, then your actions change. And once your actions change, then your results change. Then your reality changes. That, my friends, is conscious creation in practice. But it all starts with thoughts in your mind. You have got to be aware of where your thoughts are coming from. And a majority of the population, world population, in my opinion, are getting hammered with repetitive messaging from social media, traditional media, people putting their fears on you, your family telling why things are not possible, etc. I want to reiterate something. Trying life on is not about real estate, ever. I use it as an example a lot because it's just my lived experience. That's all. It ain't about travel. It ain't about money. It ain't even about lifestyle design. Those are just outcomes. They're just outcomes. The deeper layer of Try Life On is learning how to consciously participate in the shaping of your own mind instead of unconsciously allowing the world to shape it for you. Sorry, but that's what formal education is. It shapes your mind, right? A lot of it is beneficial, but a lot of it has nothing to do with your dreams at all. And once you start understanding that, once you start becoming far more intentional about what you consume, once you start surrounding yourself with people who are supportive or folks you can model, once you start being very intentional about the environments you keep yourself in and what thoughts that you rehearse internally all the time, that's when everything changes. It changes. And I wanted to connect the dots for you guys. So when I have talked about the mental diet before, episode 61, episode 137, and the newsletter 28, I was talking about it from an esoteric perspective of how it has evolved in my own journey. Now what I want to tell you is your thoughts create your reality. They do. And your thoughts are being bombarded and influenced by stuff you are allowing in. My mind and a lot of people that I spend time with is so clear. I don't know the last time I saw Instagram. I don't know the last time I saw Facebook. I left LinkedIn, but I do post my newsletters out there, but I choose not to interact with people. It's not that social media is bad. It's just I choose consciously on what I allow in my mind and where it comes from. And now when things show up that I don't want to hear, okay, then I catch it, but I'm aware of it. I'm aware of it, and I don't let it influence me at all. And I would tell you, just from a sovereignty perspective, as a person, as a human, because we do have divinity as humans, you are a very, very powerful being and person with your ability to create. Once you figure this stuff out, everything is possible. Everything. And that is a discourse we were having in the global WhatsApp community. That is why I wanted to bring you this message again. Go back and listen to 61. Go back and listen to 137. Read newsletter 28. Matter of fact, find the book, find the pamphlet, The 7-Day Mental Diet by Emmett Fox. And one more notion on that. Emmett is not the only person who was talking about the mental diet. This is something that's been going on in history for a long time, but traditional media or social media will never talk about this stuff, ever. We can go back to Eckhart Tolle. He talked about observing thought, escaping compulsive mental identification, being aware. Joe Dispenza talks about it a lot in the form of neuroscience. Repeated thoughts become identity. Environment reinforces personality. Emotions condition the body. Wayne Dyer, who passed in 2015, he popularized self-concept and intention, consciousness-based living. One of my favorites, Viktor Frankl, who wrote the book that I mentioned to you, focused on inner freedom, meaning space between stimulus and the response, so controlling yourself. And you can go back to folks who, they're known. Carl Jung, the famous psychologist, talked a lot about inherited scripts. Joseph Murphy, Dr. Joseph Murphy, who I talk about a lot, focused on subconscious acceptance, autosuggestion, and protecting the subconscious mind from fear impressions. And if I want to get really practical, the last episode with Carla Royal, who helps high-performing entrepreneurs recognize that they are overriding their own divinity. They're running unconscious scripts that society has told them. Look, you made $1 million, you should make 10. You made 10 million, you should make 50. You made 50 million, you should make 100 million. That'll make you happier. No, they're just running a script It's thoughts. It's all thoughts. And if you recognize that, you start to recognize the power of controlling them. And one of the tools you can use to control that is employing a mental diet, which is just consciously being aware of what you allow into that mindset of yours. I hope you do. It has been probably the number one tool that has given me my joy over the past 3 decades. And even more than joy is control. No one can control what I do except for my dad and my God and myself. That's power. But power comes from understanding what you allow into your mindset and directing your thoughts and controlling them. I hope this helps, and I hope you keep trying life on. Peace. Hey guys, this is Maurice, host of the Try Life On podcast, and thank you for listening to another episode. I hope you are finding it useful in helping you design your own lifestyle that you don't need a vacation from. If that's the case, please consider dropping a review for me, whether in Apple, iTunes, or in Spotify. Drop a review, put some stars on it. Give me some feedback on how I can make the podcast better, what information you are looking for. I am doing my best to get information to you on the Try Life On principles, the 5 freedoms, how to build lifestyle, travel hacking, all of it. And I want to do it for you. So please do a review for me. And until next time, my name is Maurice Philogene, and this is the Try Life On podcast. Peace.